If you're an aspiring barrister, then you will be, or you should be, familiar with mooting. And there's a lot that goes into making you a formidable mooter, which I've learned along the way by observing moots, acting as a master of moots, and actually participating in moots. So in today's video, I'm going to break down the needs to know to prepare you for the moots ahead. Guys, it's nice to have you back on the channel. I hope you've had a lovely Christmas and Happy New Year to you all. My name's Taz and I'm a barrister based in the UK, and on this channel we look at the challenges facing law students and explore the nature of our minds through materials, supplements and practices to create happy, healthy and optimized mental well-being. This video comes at your request. I looked in the comments section, someone asked if I could put a mooting video together. I had a look to see what was out there. I couldn't really see anything comprehensive, so I thought, you know what, let's give it a go. To kick it all off with, what is a moot? Basically, a moot is a mock appeal case where two teams of advocates will give their submissions to a judge, and throughout it, they'll be questioned by the judge on the basis of their submissions. Now, before the moot, you'll be given a problem question and it will outline the grounds of appeal, and that will be the focus of the actual moot itself. Every moot is different. Each institution has their own set of rules. So I'm going to try and give a broad overview of what's encompassed within the actual moot itself, but always defer to your own institution to ensure that you're following the right rules and regulations for your moot. There are three key players in the moot. The mooters, normally this consists of lead and junior counsel. Lead counsel will tackle first grounds of appeal. Juniors will tackle the second grounds of appeal. The judge.
This video is sponsored by Lexstery, the first free online community for aspiring lawyers pursuing a legal career in England and Wales. Inside the community, you will gain access to our courses, legal career consulting programs, forum, free resources, and live events, which we run every month, covering a range of topics, including legal applications, legal interviews, advocacy events, and we host guest speakers from across the legal profession who share their tips and tricks on how to secure a training contract and pupillage. You can sign up for free at lexstery.com, and we look forward to welcoming you inside our legal community.
And they are basically there to question counsel on their submissions, and there'll be judicial intervention throughout the moot, which mooters need to prepare for. And finally, you have the clerks or the timekeepers making sure that the mooters stick to the times allocated. With respect to timings, normally lead counsel will be given 7 minutes for their submissions because they are dealing with the first rounds of appeal, which tend to be more detailed and broader, and juniors will be given 5 minutes. The order in which submissions are given can vary, but the standard format for a moot is lead appellant followed by the lead respondent, then you have the junior appellant followed by the junior respondent. Yes, there are different formats such as cross appeals, but that's normally the standard recipe. Let's get into the preparation. Remember, a seasoned vet can be bested by a first-time mooter depending on the level of preparation they've done. The bedrock to the moot is when you're given that problem to identify what's relevant and discard what isn't, because that's going to be the focus of your research. The key is to focus on the grounds of appeal. Do not get lost in the weeds. It's really easy to do when you start diving into the research. Just remember that because it's absolutely essential. Once you know what the problem is, remember from the outset that you're not going to make more than really 3 submissions. So identify what those submissions are through the research and tailor that research towards building those submissions. The best place to start with the research is the textbook. Know what area you're talking about, whether it's negligence, misrep, contract. Go to the chapters in your book and wrap your head around what the issues are in the problem by understanding that area of law. You don't want to miss the area of law. You don't want to turn up to a moot thinking it's a misrepresentation and it's negligence, because it just blows everything out the water and you'll end up looking like an absolute fool. When you're doing the research, identify the key cases in that area based on their relevance, first and foremost, to the problem that you're facing. And then the second is the actual authority behind that case. And for those of you who've forgotten, up here I've put the actual hierarchy of the English court system as a reminder in case it's been a while. Supreme Court cases will carry more weight than, for example, a higher court case, but it's important to actually identify what court you're mooting in, i.e. if you're mooting in the Supreme Court, a decision from a Court of Appeal case is nothing but persuasive and it's not binding. It's important to remember that. Remember, any case you end up using, you need to have its full citation because you're actually going to refer to that in your submission. But also remember, for some cases that appear in loads of different reports, there is a hierarchy in terms of the reports, again, which I'm going to put up here just for simplicity. So with that said, if you can, use the citation from the report, which is at the top of that ladder. This isn't going to make or break your moot, but we want to be getting the basics right and then finessing the difficult parts as best that we can. You won't be forgiven for getting the simple things wrong. The last thing to say on authorities, and this is quite a common pitfall for people new to mooting, is that they'll tend to just pick out a quote that they like or something which marries up nicely with their case, and they won't actually read the facts of that case and know the intricacies of that case. And what will happen is you'll get to a moot, you'll be questioned on the specifics by a judge, you won't know, and it just serves to weaken the argument that you put forward. Basically, where I'm going with this is know those authorities inside and out if you're going to use them. In advance of the moot, you'll normally be asked to submit a skeleton argument, and that skeleton argument will be contained within a bundle. Let's take each of those in turn, starting with the skeleton argument. All I want to say with the skeleton is that, number one, it should be a summation of your points and the authorities that you're going to use. You need to check with your institution what is the limit in terms of the word count with the skeleton and how many authorities are you allowed to use, because normally there will be a cap. And the final thing I want to say with skeleton arguments is that, remember, this isn't a document that is going to show every single thing you're going to say in there. The point of the skeleton is that it's a skeleton. It's the bare bones of your submissions, which you get to the moot and you breathe life into those arguments. You use that skeleton as the springboard for what you're going to say, not as the blueprint for every word that's going to come out of your mouth. In terms of the bundle, it's your skeleton argument with all your authorities wrapped up into one, and you're going to want several copies of it, one for the judge, potentially one for the opposition. And I would recommend highlight it, sticky notes, the important parts, dividers, whatever you want to use, it needs to be easy to navigate. Why? Because you want to be able to grab their ear when you're delivering something rather than them trying to scramble through your skeleton. And the easier it is to find, the easier it will be for them to listen. I'm happy to provide my skeleton argument and trial bundle as templates for you guys. Just reach out to me. My details are in the description below. Dress is just standard court attire, so dark colours, formal wear. When you're mooting, you'll be on your feet delivering submissions. When you're not, you don't want to be shifty and moving around. It's very distracting for everyone listening. So you just want to be seated, still, and just be observant of your actual behavior while you're not delivering submissions. There's different etiquette for the judge, for the opposition, for co-counsel, and for yourself. So let's start off with the judge. Whenever you refer to a judge in a moot, it's directly, that is, it's my lord or my lady. If it's indirectly, it's your lordship or your ladyship. Examples would be, my lord, I have 3 submissions I will put before the court today, or if I can direct your lordship to paragraph X. Top tip, you can never refer to a judge as you. So for example, you can't say, can I get you to, the room will go silent and they'll look at you with absolute disgust. So when referring to co-counsel or your team, it's my learned friend, Mr. or Mrs. Jackson. When you're talking about the opposition, it's always referred to them as lead counsel for the appellant or lead counsel for the respondent. Just to make it clear, you don't just have to refer to the opposition by saying lead counsel for the appellant. You can also use my learned friend with them. Finally, when you're talking about yourself, never use the word I think. It's always, it is my respectful submission that. What separates a good mooter from a great mooter is really basic. It's knowing your stuff. And what do I mean by that? It's knowing the facts of the case, knowing the law, knowing your authorities, and most importantly, knowing your submissions like the back of your hand. And because that will allow you to be flexible in there, you won't be rigid, stuck to a script, stumbling over yourself. You know everything, you know exactly what it is you're trying to say and where you're trying to get to. Stance is important. You don't want to be fidgety, distracted, tapping your leg, all these things that you normally will iron out by practicing. Film yourself, see what those little habits are that you have and try and work on them and get rid of them so that when you're in there, you're very focused, you're very still, you're very professional. eye contact is really important. So you don't want to be down in your skeleton. You want to be looking into the judge's eyes and empowering that submission through eye contact. Style is important, but that's something really you'll only figure out through experience, through doing more moots, gaining that confidence in your own ability and your ability to deliver persuasive submissions. I can't emphasize how important tone is. So when you're listening to someone who's just very monotone in their delivery, so it's just very much like this, it's so much less persuasive than when you're listening to an advocate delivering submissions where they are very selective in the words that they are choosing to emphasize, and they're just very conscious of what it is they're saying and how it is that they're saying it. Volume's really important. You don't want to be sounding like this throughout the entire moot. You want to be making sure your voice is heard at the back of the court and that the judge can hear your submissions clearly. Finally, speed. Whatever you say about speed, I guarantee you, when it's the first time you're delivering submissions, even when you think you're going slow, you're going fast. So my recommendation would be always slow it down, because even if you think you're moving at a certain pace, you're not. You're probably moving too fast, especially for beginners. Practice, see how fast you're going, and just always have a referral in the moot to remind you, a physical reminder to slow down. Let's get into the moot, but before we do, I just want to say this. When I started mooting, people would always be saying, don't use a script, whatever you do, don't use a script. But the script does have its benefits, especially for an inexperienced mooter. It's like stabilizers, it's like riding a bike. It's really useful in the beginning. And what I will say is, once you've got that experience, then you leave it behind. Because the problem is with using a script is that you're down there in the skeleton when you need to be present in the moot to be able to respond to things on the fly. And the only way you can do that is when you divorce yourself from the script. I thought it'd be really helpful to break down the moot in the actual order of the sections that an advocate will take in the moot itself. So let's start with the first section, and that is the introduction. The intro will go something like this. If it pleases your lordships, my name is Tariq Al-Deek, and I will be appearing with my learned junior, Mr. Wasim Al-Deek, on behalf of the appellant. My learned friend, Mr. Benjamin Watson, will be appearing with Mr. Elliot Caddick on behalf of the respondents. My submissions concern the first ground of appeal. The second section is the facts. Now, you'll rarely be asked to repeat the facts because that's eating into submission time. But normally, the formality is to say something along the lines of, is your lordship sufficiently familiar with the facts in the present appeal? After the facts, you want to briefly outline the arguments which your team's going to deal with, indicating what points you're going to deal with and what points your junior's going to deal with. And after that, you'll say something along the lines of this. My lord, I have 3 submissions to put before the court today. My first submission is X, my second submission is Y, and my third submission is Z. Now, the fourth part is the actual delivery of your first, second, and third submission. And after you deliver your third submission, it's a conclusion or a summary of those submissions. In terms of building and delivering the submission, I would use the point, evidence, explain method. So make the point, refer to the law as the evidence to support that point, and then explain its relevance to your appeal and to your submission. So after outlining your submissions, it would be something along the lines of, unless your lordships have any questions at this stage, I will proceed with my first submission. An example of the first submission could be something like this. My lord, my first submission is that the contract between Mr. Yellow and Mr. Green is void, as Mr. Yellow's advertisement did not constitute an offer but an invitation to treat. That would then be followed by the evidence, which is the law or your authority, which you're going to refer to. Now remember, when you're referring to authorities, you need to give the full citation. So for example, it's something like this. May I refer your lordships to the case of Hunter and Canary Wharf Limited, which can be found at the 1997 Law Reports Appeals Cases at page 665. After you've directed the judge to the case in the exact paragraph, you then need to ask if they would benefit from a brief summary of the case, the relevant facts of that case. And again, this would go something like, would your lordships benefit from a summary of the facts in this case? And then once you've actually cited the case, then you'll proceed to the explanation part, which is exactly how is that case relevant to the submission that you're making in this appeal. And then after you've followed that for each of your submissions, at the end of your third and final submission, ask the court, would they benefit from a summary of your submissions? For example, would your ladyship benefit from a summary of my submissions? The final section is the sign off. It's a formality, essentially where you say, "My lordships, unless I can be of further assistance, those are my submissions." I briefly want to deal with judicial intervention, and this is where you'll be delivering a submission. It might not be making sense, or a judge might want some further information, so he might cut you off, or she might cut you off and ask you a question about the submission that you're making. Now, the first thing I want to say is this: the best remedy for dealing with judicial intervention is to have already thought about what are the weaknesses in your position or in your submissions in advance and try and predict what the questions are going to be. When responding to a judge, it is "I'm obliged" or "I'm grateful." A top tip when dealing with judicial intervention: don't just say the first thing that comes to your mind. Always pause for a few seconds, collect your thoughts, order those thoughts, and then say it, rather than just responding out of impulse and just blurting the first thing that comes out of your mouth. If you're thrown a curveball and you don't know and you need a bit more time, just ask the judge to repeat the question. You buy yourself time to think about it a little bit more, and by the time he's finished asking it again, you can pause, take a little bit more time, and then give him the best thing that you can conjure up and hope it's good enough. If you get asked a question, you have no idea what to say, and you have nothing to say, then say something along the lines of this: "I'm sorry, my lord, that is not a matter I feel I'm able to assist you with." Finally, I think it's really important for anyone doing any sort of mooting to have an appreciation for what the judging criteria looks like. How is their performance being assessed? And normally this consists of 4 components. The first is the presentation, clarity and strength of oral arguments made. The second is the use of authorities. The third is the actual how they've dealt with judicial intervention. And finally is the courtroom manner. And each of these have subcategories in which they're judged against, and they're rated normally out of 10. At the end of a moot, whether you've won or lost, ask if it's not offered for feedback, because really you want to be going into every moot, having a little journal and adding all the judges' comments to it so that you can use that feedback to refine your performance, see where the holes are in your game, where the weaknesses are, and all of that will contribute to making you a more polished version and a better mooter. Thank you guys for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed that episode, but please do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you want to support the channel, then make sure to like and subscribe. It makes a massive difference. And other than that, guys, you know what it is. I'll see you at the next one.